During Bathurst weekend recently, these sandblasters were on sale at super cheap. My son saw them on sale. He's in WA. He ordered one from an Adelaide store and my missus went to get it for me. He said it was a belated birthday present. He had read reviews and in standard form he said they're pretty crap. They were $200, so with modifications you can make it into something worthwhile. Other YouTubers have made modifications that work for them. The grit siphoning system is the first thing to be addressed. Normally $350, it's worth spending $100 on a few bits to fix it up. My hands fit in the gloves, which I'm a little surprised about because my hands are pretty big. Put my hands in one of these in the past and gloves have been too small. That's great, quite a surprise. I'll get some use out of that. Well, before I could make mods to the siphoning system for getting the grit out of the bottom of this blaster, I needed to make a stand so that you can get access to the port on the bottom of the chute inside it. So I've welded up this inch tube frame and put some wheels on it. Got a V shape in the bottom of it there that suits this old vacuum cleaner. That keeps that up off the ground and it slots in there nicely. So the outlet or inlet of the vacuum there pokes out this side and will come up to the vacuum port here. I'm buying a Cyclone separator that'll go on here, and I've already bought some of the parts that go underneath in the port there. It's on its way. It's got in the way of building quad bikes because one of the next jobs I want to do on the quad bike is put some wheels on, and I'd like to sandblast the rims. So that's where I'm at. This morning I am significantly reducing the size of the mesh tray from that size, which covered the whole floor of the unit with a corner cut out for the pipe work or the siphon to come through, down to 300 by 470, where the siphon tube will now come in above this grill through a grommet that's cut through the side of the hopper up above the grill. So I'm trying to do this as neatly as possible. I cut a piece out of the centre of this short side and closed the two bits together. This diagonal corner causes a little bit more issue, but I'll somehow make that channel from that end fit. So that's the tray, modified, shortened. Still quite a bit of room in the hopper below that mesh. Tray used to be up at this level. Now here, the air inlet that's currently drilled there, I'll probably bring the siphon point up here somewhere so that the two hoses are originating near each other. Being above the mesh, there's no need for a cutout in the mesh. That looks alright, needs a bit of paint. And this is the underside of the grit blaster. This is the bottom of the hopper, and that's the standard plug hole. It's too small for an inch galvanised nipple to go through, so I've marked a ring around there and I'm going to try and use a little die grinder to churn out that, open up that to the larger size. Well, I successfully enlarged that hole there with the burr in a die grinder. This inch nipple fits in. This nut, I don't know what they call that sort of nut, it was available from Bunnings. It was a wider thing that doesn't screw right up on the nipple because of the tapered thread, and so I narrowed the nut in the lathe, narrowed its partner nut in the lathe by turning it on this effectively as an arbor. 6-jaw chuck helped grip the hexagon because you can't really grip on the taper effectively. But with that nut wound on fairly tight, it gave a surface on the back and a 6-sided gripping face which seemed to spin it pretty concentrically. Anyway, those two bits are done. I can now put that in, put the nut on the inside. The nut actually fits inside that square shape on the inside and will tighten up without a spanner. I just ran a bit of a taper on that machine surface of this nut so that it fits better up inside the bottom of the hopper. It was a fraction tight and wasn't seating as well as it should have, so now it does seat properly. And so this two together, I don't think it needs thread tape and stuff because it's not dragging a vacuum or liquid, it's just holding a bit of sand in. So that's the nut on the inside. You can see the weld bead top and bottom there. That taper gave a bit of clearance too. That's sitting in there neatly. I was able to just tighten it up without spanners. So this is my version of the siphon assist. This is the drain plug that would just allow grit to drop straight through into a collection container. If you're changing the grit, might be changing from garnet to glass bead, so it just falls straight through. That plug there would normally be kept in place, doesn't really have to be sealed particularly well, although tightens up against the taper. Normally I've seen designs where they put a T-piece here and another T-piece here with a tap in the top to feed air in to help push or assist the grit up through the tube that attaches on here. This is the 3/4 hose fitting, and it then heads up through a hole in the hopper up here, which is just a piece of tube that runs straight up there. Now the advantage of that is the air's coming in quite near the outlet of this. You think of the grit's going to fall into here and probably build up at a bit of a batter angle, not necessarily wanting to flow out along through another T. Anyway, what I'm going to do, this is inch, this is inch to 3/4 water pipe, and this is 1/2 inch. What I'm going to do is put a bit of pipe from the air bleeder here right through the guts of this and down. I don't know what length is going to work best, but possibly right through to about there, a piece of tube about that long. There'll be a piece of tube that's got a flange on the end of it that sits up inside this 1/2 inch here and then gets clearance all the way through there. It's going to partially block the drain and it's going to partially block the material falling down through the hopper. But I think I'm not going to go with a 1/2 inch tube there. I'm going to go with something like a 3/8 tube. Got a bit of brass tube over there, thin wall, that I will make a fitting for that sandwiches between the end of this and the tap. I think the air being sucked in is going to get a straight path through the tap, through this tube, and the tube length may be closer to where it's going to pick up the grit and help it up the exit tube. So we'll see how that works out. Part of the reason I went for this cross fitting here instead of 2 T's was they didn't have 2 T's at Bunnings at the time. The 2 T's, by the time you put a nipple between 2 T's, outlet ends up a distance away from the hopper. Grit sort of needs to get primed up into that distance over there because it doesn't naturally want to fall right up that far in this siphon. I think this might even work better. So I found this bit of 3/8 brass tube. It's really thin wall. It doesn't block too much of the pipeline there. And I printed up a 3D bush, this red piece that is a press fit onto the brass tube and the red piece is a sliding fit inside that 3/4 to 1/2 inch nipple, and then with the flange on the end, the gas tap actually squares it up. You'll see the tube as that comes, centers the tube down that end. All of this isn't sealed up or anything yet, but now the length of that tube is the next question as to what works the best. You've got grit coming down here with the bung in the bottom, and you'd think that it's not going to necessarily fill, it's going to fill that T and spill out into the nipple there, I'm thinking. But there is a thing called, when you pile sand up, just pour a sand castle, the sand stacks up into like a little conical shape. The edges of that conical shape is the batter angle. Different materials have different batter angles. Well, I'm guessing the batter angle for this grit might be, it comes down to here and it will sort of spread out over a distance, and there's no point this tube going through that batter angle because it's just in air, and then when the siphon starts sucking, it's only going to suck air. It needs to sort of suck rocks and air. So I'm thinking this tube, if it came as far as the edge of this T, that's going to be close to the edge of the batter angle. From there, it's likely to assist. It can be shortened, or if necessarily lengthened. If I cut it there, I've got a piece of tube there that I can put a longer piece in later if I think it works better. I've decided to cut the end of that tube on an angle. I'm going to place it in there with the short side facing up, thinking that maybe if some of the grit falls down, that angle is, when it's seated there at that length, sticking out the end of that nozzle. It's all suck it and see science. We'll see what happens. So I can position that with the sloping towards the hopper. When I screw the valve on, it'll lock on that red end and hold it in that position. There's the tube. That's it down from the top, not obstructing the gallery too much. That's the tap tightened up and Teflon taped up, so now I'm going to just fit that on there. Then the nipple on the output side, and we're done up until 3/4 inch barb fitting, which I don't have. I've just used that step drill that I bought at Aldi a month or so ago on special. It came 3 of them for $12. That goes up to 32mm diameter. Has drilled that hole cleanly. It's near this hole. Try and get them both in the same shot, working through the doorway. I'm now going to put a grommet in here and pass the 1/2 inch rubber tube through. That's my reduced size mesh tray in the bottom. It sort of means that the extra space going there is plenty. This is the 24mm hole I drilled with the step drill, and the grommet gives you 3 sizes: an inside diameter of 19, an inside hole size of 24, and an outside diameter of 32. Now those 2 hoses are in proximity of each other there. I haven't got the rubber hose connected in, cut the length to go to my hose fitting as yet, but I think that's the next step. Lighting's pretty ordinary here, but that's the Nitto fitting supplied on the back pointing down. I haven't got the vacuum going yet, but the siphon side of things might be working okay at the moment. I've got the tap on about 1/8 of a turn, and it's siphoning material up to the gun. This is a piece of tow bar off the quad bike. Had it in the blaster and did that side of it. Knocked a lot of rust off, and it also gets up inside cavities where you obviously can't get to with the grinder. This is actually even the side I haven't blasted seems a bit cleaner because of the wind inside has blown a lot of the dirt off it, and it's now a matter of getting the rust off it, but that's starting to work. I haven't, without the vacuum on it, I've got it out in the sunlight, so I'm getting sunlight in to light the workpiece. I've been able to see, and it hasn't been too dusty to work that much so far. I'm going to keep having a play. That's that tow bar hitch blasted. You pull it out of the box and you see slight blemishes still that maybe have been missed, but I think that's good enough to paint. I'm going to get some paint on it before it starts to flash rust. This is the first piece that I've sandblasted or grit blasted. Had a shot of black paint on it. It has a nice sort of satin finish, I suppose you'd say, given that it was a pretty rusted piece. Been able to get into most of the inner corners and to some extent up inside the flap there with the paint, with the blaster. There's a couple of spots I've gone a bit light on the paint with, but that piece is, as I regularly say, almost looking brand new. I've printed up these yellow plastic links that links this battery base, which has a voltmeter, amp meter on it, to a quad bike 12 volt headlight. It's also got a 18 volt to 12 volt regulator board in there. The idea is that that can fold down, so it can fold over like that and shine into the sandbox. Now it's difficult to show how effective that is. If I turn that on, you can now see the gun in the corner there. I'll turn that off and on again. So that provides a fair amount of light. You can't look it directly into that light. One of my little projects today was printing up those yellow links. Second thing that came in today was this Cyclone dust extractor. You plug the vacuum in the top here, it sucks through here. The dust coming in the air kind of swirls around. The heavier stuff falls to the bottom into a container that you have bolted on the lower section there. The final parts of this box that needs organising, so effectively got the light done. There's a couple more modifications to it I want to make. I've got to find the right sorts of bolts. I've got to make some adapters that better mount this to the side of the box. As the vacuum's got to come in the top here, I don't know whether to use some rigid piping to go down to connect to the vacuum, or whether just to continue it in flexible. That's my dust collector and vacuum plumbed in with 2-inch drain pipe, I suppose you call it. What is it? All 2-inch internal diameter. The bucket there on my first run only collected a fraction in the base. Not too much is getting through to the vacuum after it goes through that separator. Light on top. It can be sort of moved along from that corner. If you want to see something up the other end, it's pretty easy just to slide it along and light up something else. It might be handy having two, but two would take up more of the window. So I'm pretty happy with how that's going. I blasted an old exhaust muffler. It came up pretty good. This is supposed to be a 100-litre sandblaster. That sort of figure doesn't mean a lot until you try and get things in that will fit, and then there's things that won't fit. Now, surprisingly, that's a front bumper going through the door. Now, I've cleaned this up already a bit with a wire brush, but I'm now going to give it a blast because I can, or I hope I can. I hope I've got enough room for my hands in there when this is inside. You can't get the wire wheel up inside areas like that, but I'm sure I can blast a few stones in there. So I'm going to give that a blast, and once it's blasted, I think it's ready for paint straight away. I was expecting to have to put acid on this, but I think if I can blast all the surfaces, I'll be able to paint it straight away, and that removes the step and probably gives a better overall finish as well. So I've put that down there and start the process. I was having a few issues with the amount of grit coming through the gun, so I adjusted the metering valve that I've added on the siphon and started to get better results.
That's the outside. If anything, it looked better inside the cabinet than when you pull it out. This is the pitted rust area. It looked like I had that all cleaned up. I think I will run a bit of acid over it as well now. I'll put a little bit of acid on it and let it see what it looks like after the acid's had a go. So that front bash plate's had a light coat of phosphoric acid. I think that's zinc plating. Will paint up nice. I'm not going to tip it over to show you the other side. I might show you when it's dry. Front bar has been sitting here all day with a bit of acid on it. There was red rust showing down this side here and across this bar in that section. It gets turned to a material that can be painted. It's effectively works like an etch. I don't know what the formula is. I think it's got some sort of phosphorus metal combination. But that bar, after partial sandblasting, it was too difficult to get my hands in and around it. I can turn that one over because it's pretty much dry. I got more done on this backside. In and around these bars was where I couldn't get in with the wire wheel, and I concentrated on spots like that when I was spraying it. I'll give those both a wipe down with mineral turpentine tomorrow and give it a spray with some black paint, primer paint. It's an epoxy 2-in-1 type paint I'm using, this black galv combination.
I'll be making a few more refinements, but at the moment I've got a machine that works and I can get on with it. Get out to your shed and have some fun.